Hello everyone, our lesson today is on auxiliary verbs in English. Now I've got, as you can see, 8 questions for you, and I'm going to read one by one. Question 1. What is an auxiliary verb? Question 2. Are auxiliary verbs parts of speech? Question 3. What is the meaning of auxiliary? Question 4. Do auxiliary verbs have other names? Because that's important. Maybe when you watch videos on YouTube or you read a grammar book, if some grammar books use different names, so you think this is different from this. Number 5, what do auxiliary verbs do? And number 6, how do I know an auxiliary verb from a main verb? Number 7, which verbs can be used as auxiliary and as main verbs? And question 8, are auxiliary verbs the same as modal verbs? So I've got 8 questions. The beginning of the video will be easy if you are basic or elementary entry 2, but then it will be more and more difficult if you try to watch. But if you watch it again and again, it will be easy for you, I hope. So I will give you a few seconds, maybe 1 minute, to think about the answers, and then I will give you the answers and explain very, very slowly. Okay, ready? You can take a picture of this screen, or you can write the questions or watch the video again. It's up to you. Okay, what is an auxiliary verb? An auxiliary verb is one word or more than one word. Sometimes it is one word, sometimes it is more than one word in a sentence. We can have up to 3 auxiliary verbs in a sentence. Number 2, are auxiliary verbs parts of speech? Now, if an auxiliary verb is a main verb, then it is a part of speech, of course. For example, verb to be and verb to do and verb to have, sometimes they can be main verbs, so they are parts of speech. But if verb to do and verb to have and verb to be are auxiliary verbs, it means they are not parts of speech, because we cannot use them on their own in a sentence. So if an auxiliary verb is a main verb, then it is part of speech. But if the auxiliary verb is not a main verb, then it is not a part of speech, because we cannot use it on its own. If you see one verb in a sentence, then, this is my typing mistake. If you see one verb in a sentence, then this is the main verb. If you see 4 verbs in a sentence, then the first 3 verbs are auxiliary verbs, and the last verb is a main verb. Again, I use the same sentence. Julie will have been studying English for 10 years. Will is an auxiliary verb, have is an auxiliary verb, been is an auxiliary verb, study is the main verb, and I put ing to it. Of course, I cannot say studying is a verb, because studying, it doesn't have a tense. You have to say study is a main verb, and ing is, we add it to study. So I have 3 auxiliary verbs, and then I have a main verb, and then I have an ing added to it. So we can use up to 3 auxiliary verbs in a sentence. Number 3, what's the meaning of auxiliary? Auxiliary means secondary. which means not main. So auxiliary verb, it means it's not a main verb. Do auxiliary verbs have other names? Yes, they do. They do. Auxiliary verbs are called secondary verbs, helping verbs, and effective verbs. Wow. So why do we have all this about them? What's the meaning of secondary? What's the meaning of helping? What's the meaning of effective? I'm going to read slowly. They are called secondary verbs because they are not main verbs, and we cannot use them on their own in a sentence. Next, they are called helping verbs because they help us to make negative, questions, and tenses. Tenses or verb forms. Tenses are the same as verb forms. Again, auxiliary verbs are called effective verbs because they don't take s, ed, or ing as main verbs do. So I cannot, for go I can put es, but I cannot say he musts. So must is not regular, it's defective. Again, I went, but I cannot say I musted. I say I am going, but I cannot say I am musting. So we cannot add anything to auxiliary verbs. This means they are defective because they are different from main verbs. What do auxiliary verbs do? They help us to make negative, questions, and tenses. How do I know an auxiliary verb from a main verb? How do I know? If you see one verb in a sentence, then it is a main verb. But if you see more than one verb, the last verb is always the main verb. So if I say to you, I have lived in London for 2 years, have is auxiliary, lived is the main verb. Have lived is present perfect. The first verb is auxiliary, the second one is main. If I say I have been living in London for 2 years, so have auxiliary, been is auxiliary, and live is the verb, we add ing to it. I have been in the swimming pool for 20 minutes, again, have is auxiliary, been is the, main verb. So all the time, the last verb is the main verb. Number 7. Which verbs can be used as auxiliary and as main verbs? Verb to be, verb to have, and verb to do. So do, be, have. These 3 verbs can be used as main verbs and as auxiliary verbs. Examples. Adam is our manager. Now, if you look at this sentence, we only have one verb. This means is a main verb. The verb is a main verb because it's the only verb in the sentence. Adam is eating an apple. So here we have 2 verbs and we are using is to make the present continuous. So the verb is an auxiliary verb which helps us to make the present continuous tense. And eat is the main verb and we add an ing to it. Jane has 2 children. Has is a main verb. Why? It is the only verb in the sentence. Jane has bought a car. We have 2 verbs. So the first verb is an auxiliary verb and the second verb is a main verb. If you watch my videos on tenses, I put many videos on all tenses in English, so you can see how we use auxiliary verbs to make tenses and how to make questions or negative in other videos. Are auxiliary verbs the same as modal verbs? Modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verbs. So the family, father and mother if you want, or the parents are auxiliary verbs. Under auxiliary verbs we have modal verbs. So they are a type of auxiliary verbs. Modal verbs are a type of auxiliary verbs, and modal verbs help us to express or to show our feelings and opinions about anything, about people, about animals, about things, about events. So you can park your car here. Can park is a verb. Can is a modal verb. So what's the meaning of this sentence? What is the meaning of can park? It means we give you permission to park your car here, or you are allowed to park your car here. So can is a modal verb and it has a meaning, and this meaning is what? Permission. It gives permission. Again, if you go to google.com and you type interactive exercises on auxiliary verbs, Google will give you thousands of websites, and then you can do practice on auxiliary verbs. Also, you can do practice on tenses, because I put many videos on tenses, so you can watch again the information about tenses, and then you can go to Google and do practice online. You need to understand the basic information. After this, you go to do more practice on the internet. Thank you for watching the video. Again, please click on subscribe if you liked it, and I will put more videos for you in future. Thank you.